Jeff Bezos shocked the world when he stepped down as CEO of Amazon. Less shocking was his choice for successor. Andy Jassy was not only one of his longest tenured lieutenants, but the architect of Amazon's multi-billion-dollar cloud business, Amazon Web Services, a moonshot that helped transform Amazon into not just e-commerce, but enterprise juggernaut. Jassy then needed to find his own successor, tapping a former colleague who helped grow AWS in its earliest days, but had since left to run Seattle software giant Tableau. His job to continue the reinvention of AWS and, in turn, Amazon. Joining me on this edition of Bloomberg Studio 1.0, new AWS CEO, Adam Selipsky.
You worked for AWS for 11 years and then went on to become CEO of Tableau Software in 2016. Then you get a call from Amazon to come back and run AWS as CEO. Tell me about that call.
Well, I was having a one-on-one at my prior company, and my Apple News alerts went off like everybody else's did, and Jeff Bezos is taking on a new role, and Andy Jassy is taking on the CEO role of Amazon. And of course, Andy and I worked shoulder to shoulder about 20 feet apart for 11 years, so of course I reached out and congratulated him, and we started talking, and the conversation turned to just some of the possibilities, and next thing I know, a little while later, here I am back at Amazon, absolutely delighted and honored to be the CEO of AWS and helping to shepherd this amazing business for our customers.
In that process, did you talk to Jeff as well?
Yeah, I had some communication, but it was principally with Andy, who of course was knew the AWS business best, and of course was taking on the CEO role. But yeah, there was contact, as you might expect, with a small handful of other people.
So what did Andy tell you he wanted in the next chapter for AWS?
Andy reminded me, not that I needed reminding, but that it is really still day one for AWS and for our customers. It is still so early in this business, and we shouldn't think that just because the business has grown rapidly, or just because we're currently the leader in the cloud, that it's anything close to mature. And so he really reminded me that we have to stay hungry, innovate as quickly as we ever have done in the past.
You're about half a year into the job.
Mm-hmm.
What changed while you were gone that surprised you?
Well, I think that so many more customers have really adopted the cloud and have really decided that they're going all in. So, it was a pretty decent-sized business when I left, but it's really grown, and the customer base has really expanded. And so now we have very deep relationships at the CEO level, the CIO level, across every country, every industry, every use case, and we're regularly interacting with the most senior people at our client organizations.
So you were working at Real Networks
Yes.
in the early 2000s, and I understand you were offered a job at AWS without even really knowing what it was. I guess AWS was in stealth mode.
Well, it was very secret, so it was hard that the company didn't want to talk too much about it, but of course we had to talk a certain amount about it. So the call I got went something like, we have this initiative to turn the guts of Amazon inside out and expose it to other people. And it sounded intriguing, although I confess I didn't fully understand what that was all about. So I came in and started talking to Andy and a few of the other senior leaders, and eventually to Jeff. And I would have to say that even by the time I took the job, I thought I mostly understand what they're talking about, and it sounds like a good idea, and I'm in. But I also was like, well, we'll just have to see how it goes, and Amazon's a big place. And so I think we got a lot of intent to succeed here, and that's the thing that impressed me, was Amazon really had the desire and the intent and the belief that this could be a really good business.
AWS comes out of stealth mode and is the first to market with a cloud infrastructure service in 2006. How important was that first start, and do you think AWS still has an advantage today because of that?
I think the time to market advantage that we had, which was probably honestly 5 to 7 years head start before other companies really started to take this seriously, was an enormous. Frankly, it was just one of the biggest things that happened to us in the early years. Because at the beginning, a lot of people didn't get it. I would get asked a lot in 2006, so what does this have to do with selling books? And I even had a slide with kind of a pile of books on it and a question mark next to it. And the answer was, it has nothing to do with selling books, but the technology which enables us to sell books, being global, being at a massive scale, being secure, being low cost, being highly performant, all that technology has everything to do with offering these types of services externally.
Now, AWS isn't a scrappy startup anymore, and you do have big rivals, even though AWS is still the leader. Microsoft and Google are big rivals. How do you make sure that being big doesn't slow you down?
It's a great question, because we are currently the leader, and I mean, depending on which third party you look at, we're probably a little bit more than twice as big as number 2. And it's really important to continue to act as if we're insurgents, and to be insurgents, and not to start to act like incumbents. And I like to talk about actually managing the business. We want our senior leaders to be managing product and managing customers. And I think as you get bigger and you put more and more layers into your company, it's all too frequent that you start managing math. You start managing ratios and percentages and growth. And I think it's a real disease if you stray away from really focusing in a deep way on the product you're building, and in a deep way on what your customers are telling you. And so we try and organize, both with our org structure as well as just with our culture and what we choose to focus on really making sure that everybody is thinking about one or both of those two things, product and customers. And if you keep even the most senior leaders engaged at that level, then all of a sudden you maintain the urgency, and you keep acting like an insurgent. We got to feel that urgency every day.
So keep acting like an insurgent. That's the motto.
Absolutely, and structure yourself and build a culture that allows you to. It's one thing to say it, but it's easy to say it, but it's much harder to put in place the enabling mechanisms that enable you to do so. And we focus a lot of effort on those mechanisms.
Now, do you think the cloud keeps getting bigger, and that AWS and Microsoft and Google just get bigger pieces of an ever-expanding pie? Or at some point, does it become a zero-sum game, and that fight for market share becomes more brutal and more bloody?
Well, I mean, this is a very large market segment. And if you look at global IT spend, it's in the trillions of dollars. I've seen estimates like $3 trillion. It doesn't really matter how many trillions it is. It's very, very large. And we've always believed that this was too good a market segment opportunity for there really to only be one winner. And sure enough, you've seen robust competition emerge, and we all compete vigorously. But the segment is just growing so rapidly that I think really for us, we believe that the winning business strategy for a long time to come, and I would maintain forever, is to focus not on the competitors, but to focus maniacally on customers and wake up every day understanding exactly what it is that they need us to build next, and then work backwards from there, back internally to how can we build those things. And if we do the best job at building the most quickly the things that are most important for our customers, then I'm really not worried about what the competitors will do.
You worked 10 feet away from Andy Jassy in the early days. Tell us something about the Amazon CEO that no one knows but you.
Zapier just integrated with OpenAI, and this is going to change the game for businesses. And
you worked 10 feet away from Andy Jassy in the early days. Tell us something about the Amazon CEO that no one knows but you.
You're going to get me in trouble, aren't you? I grew up in Seattle, and Andy, coming from New York, has this fascination I don't understand with New York sports teams. So I've had to endure that for a lot of years. New Yorkers, yeah. So what are you going to do? Although he's I think come to adopt some of the Seattle teams, particularly the new hockey team, the Kraken here.
As he should.
As he should, exactly. Exactly.
So how do you expect Andy will be different from Jeff? Or how has Andy already been different from Jeff?
Well, I think we're all different as leaders. I think it's all important that it's important that we all bring our own stamp to it and operate within ourselves. I don't think I would be a very good Andy. I don't want to presume, but I would assume that Andy wouldn't be a great Jeff, because Jeff's Jeff, Andy's Andy, and I'm me. So I think that Andy will certainly bring a great depth of experience from AWS, which is one important part of the business, and having operated that business for so long. And I expect that'll also give him an opportunity, although he was involved in other parts of Amazon, certainly for a number of years. We'll be able to bring a fresh perspective to the whole company, just as I hope to bring to AWS. And I think that fresh perspective is often helpful. I think just the mere act of change is useful for the business, for customers, for employees, and just to shake things up a little bit. So I think just a fresh perspective.
How will you be different from Andy?
Well, I think that the world around us is changing so much that we're going to have to be different. It doesn't matter what we did yesterday. And right after I joined, we actually added 2 new leadership principles, which is very exciting. One's around striving to be Earth's best employer, and the second around focusing on the fact that success and scale bring broad responsibility. And those are things about which I personally am very passionate. And so I really personally look forward to digging in and helping the company to figure out what are those things that we have to figure out. Where can we innovate to be Earth's best employer? And then also to figure out externally, what can we do to really be great citizens of our local communities, to be great citizens of our national communities, and to be great citizens of the global community. And I care a lot about those things, as a lot of other people do here, but I plan to put a good amount of energy and time and focus, and hopefully help Amazon innovate in all of those areas.
How closely do you work with Andy day to day? Does he regularly weigh in on AWS decisions or not?
Well, he's got a pretty broad scope of things to worry about now, so he's got a pretty intense day job, I believe. So he's really focused across the company, as you would expect him to be. But that being said, obviously AWS remains an important part of Amazon, and so we touch base regularly, be it in person or via email, just on the most important things going on in the business.
Does Jeff ever weigh in on AWS decisions?
Yes, I mean, really from the beginning. Jeff was involved at the very, very beginning at some of the most fundamental decisions. How do you price EC2? What do you name S3? What does the detail page look like? Obviously, over time, the business grew, and but Jeff was always available when we needed him, and I certainly anticipate that'll be the same going forward.
So is he still available now? And what do you understand that Jeff's priorities are?
Sure. Well, I'll let Jeff speak to his own priorities, but certainly Jeff has been available when, for example, we've been doing our annual planning cycle, as many companies have, and it's been great to have Jeff weigh in on really where we're heading for the next year and beyond, and to just make sure it's easy to get focused on the details of the business, and it's great to have multiple people who can help you pick your eyes up a little bit.
Now, you joined AWS in the middle of a pandemic. You came back to AWS in the middle of a pandemic. That's hopefully moving into the rearview mirror. Moderna is one of AWS's biggest customers. If it weren't for the cloud, if it weren't for AWS, would we have had a vaccine as quickly as we did?
I've got to tell you, Emily, it's been an absolute privilege for us to work with Moderna, because what they're doing obviously is literally life-saving, and they've been so innovative and so creative. So Moderna took a drug development process to get to a vaccine candidate. That process would typically have taken them 20 months. And doing that on AWS in conjunction with all the innovation on their side reduced that 20 months to 42 days. 42 days to get the vaccine candidate, the mRNA vaccine candidate for COVID-19. And that was really running multiple parts of Moderna on AWS. So if you look at the drug design part, they had their drug design studio running on AWS, all the way to manufacturing with the new digitized manufacturing that they call their digital manufacturing platform. So it's really end-to-end, and the ability to use massive amounts of resources and to pick the exact type of service and capability for each part of the job, and to really bring the full set of resources to bear. In addition to not having to focus on the IT and the infrastructure and the technology, and rather letting Moderna focus on the all-important job of drug discovery. So working in partnership, it was just magnificent to see what they accomplished.
Since you joined AWS, a number of longtime AWS leaders have moved on to Microsoft, to Stripe, to Tableau. Does that concern you?
Well, actually, retention has been very good. If you mentioned the senior leaders, if you look at the VP plus ranks, the VP and above ranks at Amazon, the average tenure is over a decade, over 10 years. So that's actually very, very strong retention. So of course, you're always going to have some level of people coming and people going, and at the end of the day, that's actually healthy for the business. You want new perspectives to come in, of course, in the right proportion.
Amazon has opened an investigation after 550 employees supported a petition claiming a culture of discrimination, harassment, bullying, and bias. What's the status of this?
Well, we are incredibly focused, and I personally believe it's incredibly important to really have a very diverse, inclusive and equitable environment. And we're going to make sure that whatever it takes that we've got that. So we believe that we're really doing a lot of things to deliver on that. And we've got a lot of innovative efforts around bringing in a diverse workforce, which we have to have both because we're going to serve our customers best. They're diverse. We have to match that diversity. And also, I just believe it's our responsibility and it's the right thing to do. Yeah, anytime there is any possibility that things are not, something has not gone the way we want it to, we're going to investigate it thoroughly. That's what we're in the middle of doing in this case, and we'll make sure that we're operating in a way that's consistent with our values, and that's always the only goal.
If you could rewind to the early 2000s, the earliest days of AWS, is there anything you would have done differently to build an inclusive culture, to start with a more inclusive culture, to make sure that it didn't become a boys' club?
Well, I don't think that's what we have. I think that we do have a really fun, exciting, innovation-led, and inclusive culture. And that being said, these are hard problems. I think we've done a lot, but we are nowhere close to where we need to be. We're going to be restless and dissatisfied with our progress on DE&I, just as we are with every other part of our business.
Mark Zuckerberg is making a big bet.
Ya Allah, doa ini kami pohon khusus buat mereka yang telah dan akan menderma kepada pembangunan kompleks pengajian percuma Darul Wafa. Sesungguhnya, Ya Allah, kompleks pengajian
AWS has the biggest trove of sensitive corporate data in the world. I'm curious how you think about the balance between data and privacy and freedom and civil liberties in the modern era. I mean, there are governments, there are nation states around the world that want that information. Hackers and criminals want that information.
Well, we're very clear to start with that our first job is security. We often say security is job zero. It was on the first page of our operating plan pretty much every year that I can remember.
But what about when governments request that information?
So,
subpoena that information?
Sure. Well, we are very clear that our customers' data is their data. So the data belongs to our customers, and not everybody operates that way. We are not going to look at customers' data. We are not going to compete against our customers using their data. Their data is their data. And furthermore, we have all sorts of architectural best practices that our customers should be and are using for any sensitive data. And so a lot of that really relies around encryption. And so we built a lot of different encryption capabilities so that any sensitive data, which could leak for any reason, be it to a government, be it to a hacker, be it to anyone else, any form of security breach, that it's encrypted and useless to anybody else. Given the broad array of encryption solutions that we provide, it's actually very doable and powerful for our customers to safeguard their data that way.
Mark Zuckerberg is making a big bet on the metaverse. Is AWS going to have a role in the metaverse?
I think AWS already has a big role in the metaverse. So I think the cloud enables the metaverse. So if you think about all of the compute capacity, all of the storage, all of the machine learning which is required to create compelling and delightful end user experiences in the metaverse, a lot of that is already today running on AWS. So if you take Epic Games, for example, so Epic runs Fortnite, massively popular game, 350 million users worldwide, and Epic runs almost everything on AWS, from back-end servers to the analytics and everything in between. So I think that's a great example of the metaverse at work, and all that's happening today on AWS. And we anticipate that's only going to grow really rapidly in the future.
How big do you think it's going to be?
It's such an interesting sentence. The metaverse is real, and yet it's virtual at the same time. I think that if we continue to do what we've always done, which is to provide a technology platform that allows organizations to transform, then these gaming and entertainment and social media and other companies will be able to do what they do best, which is to focus on innovating on behalf of their end users. And I think that the metaverse and many other areas will be rich with invention.
So this next conversation will happen in the spheres, in the metaverse. That's where we'll next meet.
That could be. I'll meet you in the metaverse.
All right, see you there. Now, I know that climate change, and stopping climate change, and your data center footprint is a big passion of yours. How fast will Amazon's data centers get to carbon neutral?
Amazon is already the largest purchaser of renewable energy in the world. And we intend to be 100% renewable energy by the year 2025. We had originally said 2030. We actually accelerated that by 5 years to 2025. And that's part of our broader climate pledge that Amazon created, and to which we've now gotten 200 other organizations to sign on to. And the climate pledge is to be net zero carbon by 2040, 10 years ahead of the Paris Accord target. Yeah. So we know how to do some of that. Other part are going to require invention, but we really look forward to it, and I think it's one of the most important things we can do for our generation.
Amazon counts some of the biggest oil and gas producers as its customers. Isn't that a contradiction? Should you be kicking them off your platform?
Those customers are trying to get to sustainable business models which rely on new energy sources. And so many of those customers are figuring out how do they get to wind, how do they get to solar, how do they get into batteries, all new business models relying on renewable energy. And I think rather than abandoning them and having them maybe dig in more on fossil fuels, if we can enable them to move faster, to be more innovative, and to be more agile in figuring out new business models, new technical solutions, experimenting, failing fast, and moving on to the next idea, then the whole world will get to the renewable energy solutions that we need.
At this year's reInvent conference, it'll be the first time that Andy Jassy is not giving the keynote. You will be. Give us a preview. What can we expect to hear?
I think we're going to have a lot of really exciting announcements. So I think across our service portfolio, you'll see that. We have a lot of exciting partner announcements. Partner ecosystem still remains to this day so important to what AWS is doing, and we have some great announcements lined up for that. And then I think people are going to want to see that we're making it easier and easier for them to consume the cloud and to work with AWS. And so we're going to continue to, in addition to building more powerful basic capabilities, we're going to continue to make it easier and easier in a variety of ways to interact with AWS.
Adam Selipsky, CEO of AWS, thank you so much for joining us.
Bloomberg has enhanced search on the terminal to deliver what you need when you need it. Now, you can simply type phrases in everyday English in the command line. Compare financials. Find people. Analyze markets. You can enter phrases.
What if we told you you could access all the information you needed with the click of a button? A's is the workspace that liberates your experts, helping them navigate, collaborate, and visualize all information in one place. Heavy assets can be displayed in whatever perspective makes sense to you, so that you can find the most intricate details and solve hidden bottlenecks. The ease of finding information in a single source of truth helps you make sense of an ever-increasing volume and complexity of data, regardless of your technical abilities. This is how A's unlocks the potential of collaborative engineering, where multiple parties gain a better collective understanding of where they are, both in time and place. Building on Accor's history, A's empowers teams to make confident decisions and drive efficiency in a sustainable way. Whether you build, maintain, or operate complex facilities, a lack of data is never your problem. It's about finding meaningful connections. That's why A's was born, to replace the guesswork with trusted information. We help you unlock the value of your data and optimize your operations across the most complex environments. Navigate your asset and connect your partners from anywhere at any time. Transform the way you work and play a part in reshaping your industry. With A's, see things differently.
A lot of people saving up for their kids' education, try to save a lump sum, and then slowly spend, pay for the expenses, and then it's finished. That's really a terrible way to do it if you ask me. Why? Simply because after the kids study and graduate, then what happens? The money is all gone. And your kids, your next generation has to start all over again. Hi everyone, I'm Daniel. I'm a full-time father, husband, and I've been investing in properties for the last 10 years, primarily in the UK. And I've helped hundreds of students do it over the last 3 years as well. I look at them and I see their children. I know that every property they buy is going to transform their lives, and it's something that has generational impact. One that comes to mind is this gentleman called Murray. About a year ago, he came to me at the end of the year and he said, Dan, unfortunately I've got cancer. Can you help me? I have a wife, I have a teenage daughter. I need to be able to take care of them even if I'm gone. I want to grow my portfolio in the next year. Please help me. And I was like, I'm more than happy to journey alongside with you and make this happen. Fast forward to today, he has built up a portfolio of more than 3 to 4 properties, gone through setting up a company, a bank account in the UK. He even got lending at 77 years old. Not just about income and passive income you get every month, but also about the impact and how can we take care of our loved ones in this process. This is really about our other halves, it's about our children, it's about our aging parents. Every month, his children, his daughter is still going to receive golden eggs income from these golden goose properties that he has bought. These properties are freehold, by the way. We're even in talks about how could he put it into a trust, and this is something that is really perpetual. We only all have one life to live. Do I want to spend 90% of my time at work rather than the important things in life, spending time with my family, being able to travel. You really need to find a way to stop trading time for money, but instead use the resources that you have accumulated over time and invest it in safe and predictable assets. Not in assets that you are hoping will make a return, but you know for certainty, after doing all your calculations, doing your research, that is something that really inspired me to build a portfolio of Golden Goose properties that generate income for myself and my family every month. If you want to be savvy with your money, you want to create generational wealth, you want to take care of your kids, their education, your retirement, or even their retirement, then really learn the system of how we have done it. Because these are tips and secrets that nobody else is going to share with you.
Google generates revenue, and so a lot of people said, like, why did you leave that and go to YouTube? But I always believed in digital video, and I believe that now we see that the world also believes. We've seen a lot of adoption of digital video and the benefits that can have.
You've championed this diversification strategy at YouTube since you started. What's working and what's not working?
Well, our main way of generating revenue is from advertising, but we also have really grown our subscription revenue, and that has been really, really important for many different reasons. So that has enabled our users to have an experience where they can have music, YouTube Music and Premium. We just announced the 50 million subscribers that we were really excited about. But we also see other ways that our creators generate revenue. So our creators, for example, generate revenue with channel subscriptions. They may sell merchandise. We also have things like digital goods, so like super chat, super thanks, and so we've basically diversified the number of ways that our ecosystem is generating revenue.
The original tagline for YouTube was broadcast yourself, and that concept has exploded. You have ordinary people in the spotlight. When they grow up, they want to be an influencer. They want to be a YouTube star or a YouTube creator. What do you see as the future of the creator economy?
I see a lot of possibility with the creator economy, and because I see that many people have a lot of interest and they have a lot to offer, and beforehand they wouldn't have been able to have shared that with the world. And so there's so many people, depending upon what their talent or their interest is, whether it's a sport or cooking or gaming or hairstyles, that people have come out and really been able to share that and create a lot of jobs. So. So we actually see like we actually saw a 35% increase in the number of creators that are generating six-figure income out of YouTube and in the last year. And so that's just an example of like how the creator economy is continuing to grow.
Well, and for years, YouTube was the only company that actually paid creators, but now a lot of companies are paying creators. Facebook and Instagram, Snap, TikTok. How do you see that competition playing out? Who wins?
Well, it is a competitive landscape, and in general, competition's good. It makes everyone work harder, and that's good. I mean, we look at creators and we say they're going to come to us if we do the best job, and creators come to us looking basically for fame and fortune. Like, how can I have a skill or I have a talent, something I want to share with the world, like, and YouTube can help that be known, can help them provide that fame, but also we can generate revenue for them. And so as long as we're doing a good job of that, creators are going to come to us. If we start to fail, then they're going to leave us and they're going to go to another platform. And so we just need to work really hard to make sure that we deliver that for our creators.
A year ago, during the Black Lives Matter protest, YouTube made big commitments to Black creators in particular. What's been the progress there? And how do you see YouTube, the potential for YouTube to be used as a tool for social justice?
Well, so we made an announcement that we were going to do a $100 million Black Voices Fund. And so we're continuing to develop content there. But one of the other things, and I think there's been a lot of great content that's come out, and we'll certainly see more.
Memang sakit kalau bangun tidur tu kena
whether this higher for longer interest rates cycle, if you will, or not one, what it really means for the economy. Okay, but let's just check in on the bond markets in this part of the world and get it over to Singapore because we have Avril Hong there. Avril, take it away.
Yeah, Rish, we're seeing how investors are recalibrating those interest rate expectations and those higher treasury yields, that momentum carrying through into the Asia Pacific. They're climbing on New Zealand as well as the Australian yields, Japan also. And the sell-off is not just in bonds, we're seeing it in the Asia FX space as well as the yields on treasuries climb, the dollar also rising, Asia FX also getting hit, and we are, if we can just take a look at the next board just to show you how the dollar is faring, that strength coming through there. We are seeing the Japanese currency and the Chinese one hovering at really weak levels, which prompted that verbal intervention from the finance minister yet again in Japan, and the PBOC coming out with yet another stronger than expected fix on record. Let's take you to the mainland because we are seeing that weakness coming through from the property sector. At the epicenter of it is Evergrande. It has since missed bond payment, and former executives have since been detained, so really raising questions about the liquidation risk potentially and what this might mean for the overall Chinese economy. Rish.
Indeed, and that is Avril Hong there, and it is this very subject that we're looking at now with this complex path to restructuring for Evergrande. Our China credit editor is Kevin Kingsbury. He's with us now. You know, former executives apparently reportedly in detention here, Kevin, and the failure to repay an onshore bond also, of course. Right. The thing is, which way are things heading here? Because they want a restructuring, or do they? That's, people are asking that question. But how can you have a restructuring without perhaps issuance of equity, raising finances and debt, or getting more debt, which has already got $300 billion worth of, and nobody's going to lend them the money anyway, so how can they possibly restructure?
Exactly, and that's the question. What exactly does the government want out of all this? Because it seems as though with the probes that's going on, we talked about the Henga one yesterday, the 2 former executives that were apparently detained in recent weeks. Now, to take a step back, those 2 executives, the former CEO and the former CFO, they left the company in July 2022 in the wake of that $2 billion scandal where some security deposits were used as collateral for some loans by third parties. So they were pushed out more than a year ago. So it seems as though we're looking at some sort of criminal aspect to Evergrande. We have the wealth, some of the employees there last week were detained. So it seems as though we have this government looking at more of the potentially criminal aspects of this probe, while at the same time still not doing much, it seems, to kind of help Evergrande get through this and try and get their homes built.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's no rescue package, and they need money in order to restructure. But this is also ahead, of course, of the industry looking forward to this Golden Week holiday, which is traditionally one of its strongest sales periods.
Yeah, definitely. We've been talking about this for a week now, where demand has still been low. The August sales were bad. We're waiting for the end of the week for September. We think that despite some of the early month pop we got after the mortgage restrictions were eased, that we'll see some similar declines as far as September sales, and it doesn't bode well for demand. Home prices have been falling, mortgage rates have been falling, but it still doesn't show that folks want to borrow to buy new homes. So there's definitely a problem here as far as what can actually stoke demand.
Again, Kevin, it's of course not the only one to find themselves in a predicament. I mean, this is becoming a key a credit event, if you like. And what have we got coming up in the next few days?
So we have Greenland today, actually, that people are voting on whether or not to extend all their dollar bonds by 4 years. So perhaps if that gets through, Greenland is a state-backed builder. So if the creditors there don't allow this debt extension to go through, it's another sign of just how much the creditors are like, we need some sort of clarity, some sort of definitiveness as to where exactly these developers are going and their ability to potentially, even if we allow them extra time now, are we just kicking the can down? Are we just kind of forestalling the inevitable and we're never going to get the money back regardless?
Kevin, good stuff. Thank you very much indeed. No doubt you're rather busy. Kevin Kingsbury there, our China credit editor. Okay, let's tell you about geopolitics now with the European Union's chief trade negotiator warning that China's position on the war in Ukraine is hurting its global image as an investment destination. We've got Dombrovskis speaking earlier at a press briefing in Beijing.
China's position is affecting the country's image, not only with European consumers, but also with businesses. Over a third of EU companies in this country have indicated that China's position on the war is making it a less attractive investment destination. China's response and its contribution to resolving the war is a way that is important for us to engage.
Meanwhile, Beijing telling Brussels to exercise caution amid the bloc's anti-subsidy probe into Chinese electric vehicles.
Hope that the EU would exercise caution and to continue to keep its market free and open. This benefits European consumers, benefits green and local development of Europe, and benefits global climate change cooperation.
Well, let's get to what we can all make of it. Asia government and politics correspondent Rebecca Chung-Wilkins is with us. And Rebecca, let's unpack this with the first one, with Ukraine, of course, being used here as perhaps a way of trying to make them, well, cajole them into taking a side and being clear what they want. Now, Fumio Kishida, the Japanese Prime Minister, recently said Ukraine is the future of Asia.
I mean, this has probably been one of the starkest assessments that we've had from an EU official over precisely what's at stake when it comes to Ukraine and China's ambivalence on, refusing to outright condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And what we've seen Dombrovskis do is really connect directly the implication of China's stance on Ukraine with the economic consequences, pointing out that it's not just about global image, but it's about businesses not wanting to return or invest in China as a result. A third of European businesses, in fact, he cited.
Okay, so that brings us to where it kind of began here, and that's what maybe sparked off the four-day trip that he's just ended. And that was their probe, the European Union's probe into EVs, and that's not been received well. pleasantly in Beijing, as it were.
Yeah, Beijing has accused the EU of naked protectionism, and it is a shift. The EU going ahead with a probe like this takes it closer to US policy, which already has quite sort of protectionist restrictions around the access of Chinese automakers into its own market, quite high tariffs in the US, around 27.5%. The EU, Beijing fears, is moving closer to that model, and that's really the worry. It is worth saying, though, that although we've had this sort of quite robust criticism from Beijing, from Vice Premier He Lifeng on these types of policies from the EU, the two sides are still talking. They are going ahead with these vice ministerial level working group meetings, as China is also proceeding with similar meetings with the US on that front too. And it does perhaps speak to this possibility that China has found that talking with US officials, for example, over the last few weeks has helped. It has created some kind of moderation in the policies that we've seen.
Indeed, as that old ad goes in the UK, it's good to talk. Anyway, thanks very much indeed for that, Asia Government Politics correspondent Rebecca June. UAW, United Auto Workers Union President Sean Fain will reportedly join President Joe Biden on the picket line in Wayne County, Michigan. Let's get more on these strikes as global business editor Karen Lee joins us now. Karen, a lot of back and forth between the two sides. What's the likely impact here with President Biden showing up?
The UAE really putting Ford on blast for halting construction on a $3.5 billion factory in Michigan. And where that gets interesting for these negotiations is that this factory would have provided 2,500 jobs, and the UAW president, Sean Fain, saying it was a barely veiled threat by Ford to cut jobs. And now, Rish, all this is happening against a backdrop of A, you're in Michigan, which is a battleground state going into 2024, and B, President Joe Biden is expected to finally visit on Tuesday, and also President Donald Trump is going to be visiting a day after, or ex-President Donald Trump is going to be visiting a day after. So you've got a lot of different moving pieces happening. And what's interesting also is that this kind of throws a wrench into the Ford negotiations, which you could argue had been going a little bit better than those with Stellantis and GM. The UAW had spared Ford. It's increased action against the other two. And so where this takes that third negotiation now remains to be seen.
All right. Do we have any idea whether there's any agreement looming? Because it does seem to be quite a tense standoff, to say the least here, Karen.
It's really tense, and when you look at the gulf between the two sides, I mean, you have the UAW asking for things that are really unprecedented in American manufacturing. They want a certain number of hours. They want a 40% pay increase. And on the other side, you have the big three who would see their labor costs go through the roof if they were to meet that. And it would make it a lot harder for them to compete with foreign manufacturers, to compete with Tesla. So this gulf is extremely wide, and there's going to be a lot of negotiation to get it to narrow.
And talking of industrial action, of course, the one between the writers and the studios in Hollywood is seemingly reached an agreement here. So what next? And indeed, what happens next for the actors who are still not on the picket line, but still striking?
Yeah, well, there was some good news. The writers and the studios have reached a tentative agreement. Now, that still has to be ratified. It's likely to pass. And now people are going to be turning to Act Two, which is SAG-AFTRA and their strike. Now, they doubled down on Sunday. They said they would continue striking. And the thing is, you can bring the writers back to the table, but until you have actors play out those roles, these studios aren't going to be able to run their schedules the way they'd like to. And we are coming up to the end of the year, to Hollywood awards season. They'd really like to see this wrapped up before then to get billions of dollars of economic hit back on track. So they're going to be looking to take that momentum and wrap up the actors' strike as quickly as possible, but that will depend on where these negotiations end up going.
Karen, good stuff. Karen Lee, there, Global Business Editor, joining us out of Sydney. Now, we've got to tell you what we've got coming up on the show. We've got our exclusive interview with the UBS Chief Executive, Sergio Ermotti, about the integration of Credit Suisse, as well as their business strategy. But up next, going to hear why RBC Brewin Dolphin thinks we are near the end of the interest rate hiking cycle.
For growing your personal wealth across ASEAN and Greater China, we